Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Natcat's Bookish Cafe. Today I'm going to be talking about some underhyped queer books. Alright everyone, it is Pride Month, and that means it is time to talk about some queer books. So me and my little friends, I don't know if you can see them, are going to talk about a few books that I think are underhyped. Now, most of these, all of these, are either male or Achillean romances. I feel like when it comes to sapphic romances, I have not dived into those as much, and the ones that I have dived into are the more popular ones, the ones that I have gotten the approval of the general population. So I don't really have any underhyped sapphic romances to talk about, but hopefully that changes because we are looking to read indie author, self-published books, all of that, and helping to get those books out there and giving those authors the time and space that they deserve. All right, guys, so I have 8 books that I want to talk about with you today. I have used the number of Goodreads ratings that they have received. I know that they might have different numbers of ratings on other bookish sites like Storygraph, or I think Fable is another one, or even different ratings on like Amazon, but I'm just using the Goodreads ones. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the one that has the lowest amount of ratings and then go into the higher amount of ratings, just because I know people don't be watching full videos, and so I want to go ahead and give the smallest books the most amount of attention. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with those. All right, so the books that I'm talking about today, they are underhyped even with the people that I follow, in my opinion. Like, I've obviously gotten the suggestion to read these books from the people that I follow, so like some of them are reading them. Most of these are not just books that I pulled out of a hat. I am someone who is usually influenced to read books rather than just going out and finding random books to read. But that being said, these are underhyped even amongst people that I would say read rather diversely and read a ton of queer books. So while there are definitely a ton of other queer books that I've read that would be considered underhyped, because most queer books are underhyped if we're being honest, these are like the underhyped of the underhyped books in my opinion. So I would be interested if you have read or heard of any of these. I mean, none of these are going to be 100% obscure. I'm not the kind of reader who is reading super obscure books. I'm trying to get a little bit more into it. But that being said, let me know what you've thought about any of these books down in the comments. And I'd also love to know what queer underhyped books you absolutely adore. All right, so I actually only own 2 of these 8 books, but the first book we're going to talk about, the one with the least amount of ratings, has a whopping, at least at the time that I checked, 32 ratings. Yes, that's right. Only 32 ratings on this book. And that is gonna be Apples of New Eden by Mars Alder. So this is a book that I read just the other month. So you probably just recently saw it in one of my reviews. This was a relatively short novel. I believe it was slightly under 300 pages. Category wise, it kind of falls under the sci-fi, horror, slight erotic storyline, and we are following a trans main character. And this is also a taboo romance, as it is a romance between half brothers. In this book, we are following our main character, Ripley, and he lives on New Eden. And this is kind of an outpost for the organization known as the Commonwealth. And they're, let's say they're the colonizers. They're going out into the universe, colonizing planets, creating these outposts. that often have a lot of poverty going on, but they are created to supply, in this case, produce to the Commonwealth and the wealthy in the Commonwealth, as well as their very large army. So Ripley is actually a mechanic slash engineer of this area, and his half brother is part of the army. Every family is required to send one child to the army, and their mother decided to send Ripley's brother since he is older and keep Ripley at home to train him to take over for her engineering job. And she unfortunately ends up passing away, so these two boys only have each other. However, Ripley's brother is often gone fighting the war, and this causes Ripley a lot of stress because he's like, my brother might die any second, and who knows when I'll find out. I might find out months from now, you know, he might be dead right now. So that causes him a lot of stress. And this book actually takes place around Christmas, and his brother is supposed to come home. However, he is informed that due to his brother's recent promotion, he's not able to do that. And obviously, Ripley is very devastated by this. However, his brother ends up showing up and things go a little crazy from there. So I'm not going to tell you anything else. Like I said, it is a relatively short story, but this was my first time reading a book by this author. I actually just the other day downloaded their newest release, which I think was called Blood Orange or something along those lines, and I am very intrigued to check that out this month. I really fell for their writing very quickly. The story sucked me in right away. While I wouldn't say it has the strongest horror elements, especially in the beginning, there are a few moments that cause a lot of discomfort that are definitely very eerie. So I think the author did a really great job of that. And I also really enjoyed how this was just kind of like a really short, compact story that gave me just enough. It is not very common for me to be out here reading short stories and being like, yeah, that's fine, I don't need any more. So usually short stories leave me wanting, but this one actually left me very satisfied. I would be happy to read more in this world or even hear more from this character, but I think that the story really served its purpose. I think the themes of rebellion and control and propaganda were really well handled in the story. As far as the erotic aspect of it, I thought that it was very sexy despite the fact that it was taboo, but I think that it was handled in a very not weird way. I don't know how else to put that. But overall, I had a really great time with the story, and I'm really looking forward to checking out more from this author. I believe they do primarily short stories and always include queerness in them. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely check out this author and give them a little bit of love. The next book had 294 ratings on it, and that's going to be Masquerade by Joel Abernathy. And I actually read this for a Phantom of the Opera vlog because this is a Phantom of the Opera retelling. Now, this is a book where I think it would be beneficial for you to be familiar with the story of the Phantom of the Opera. I think that this book really worked for me because it gave me the vibes and kind of the relationship dynamics that I was hoping to get from a Phantom of the Opera retelling. But I do acknowledge the fact that this is giving fan fiction, and so if you're not familiar with the story or with the world that the Phantom of the Opera is set in, then you might feel like the story is a little bit lacking. Because I am so familiar with that world, it did really work for me. This is a male-male romance, so we are following, I believe his name is Christian instead of Christine, and he is working at the opera. The opera owner had taken him in after his father died because they were friends, and our character really has lost his passion for singing since he lost his father, and he has been playing the part of a girl in the chorus because he is seen as having a very angelic voice, and so he's kind of resigned himself to being in the background. He's looking just to kind of be good enough so he doesn't get thrown out on the street. But one day he hears a voice in the walls, and this voice kind of teaches him to love music again, to gain confidence, to work for his rightful place in the spotlight, to kind of allow him to step on stage as himself and not as this woman. And on the other hand, we have the classic Christine and Raoul relationship going on. Raoul is essentially the love interest or whatever in the Phantom of the Opera. However, these two have a really interesting dynamic in the story because Raoul is clearly interested in Christian. However, he only wants to be with Christian when he's presenting as Christine, because he's like, I'm a nobleman, I can't just be out here with a man. That would not do, but we can be together if you are Christine. However, while Christian is perfectly comfortable dressing as Christine, he's not like a trans woman. He doesn't want to live his life fully as a woman. He's like, no, I can't be with you because I would not be able to be myself. And he finds that he can be himself with this character, Eric, who's a very tragic figure, just like the Phantom of the Opera. He was giving the perfect vibes of being dangerous, yet lonely and broken and in need of love. And I love the moments where they were singing together and working on writing music together, and it had a climactic ending. And so for me, it was really great. I really enjoyed the characters, really enjoyed the smut. It definitely made me realize that this was an author that I really wanted to go ahead and continue checking out work from. Next, we have one of the few physical books, and this is a book you've seen me talking about a lot. You're probably like, oh my gosh, Natalie, please stop talking about this book. No, I will not be stopping. Last time I checked, this had 468 ratings on Goodreads, and that is pretty, by Keith F. Miller Jr. This is a duology. I have read the second book. I gave both of them 5 stars. This is a young adult contemporary where our main characters are going to be Jay and Leroy. These are young men who are in high school. I believe it is their senior year, and at the beginning of the series, Leroy asks Jay out, and Jay is like, what? You like me? Okay, let's give it a try. But things get complicated because Leroy's family is part of an organization, or they're actually the leaders of an organization known as the Black Diamonds. And this is an organization that helps the Black community. They make sure they have a lot of outreach programs. They are bringing peace to the gangs in their area so that there's less violence. And someone is trying to tear that all down. And obviously Leroy's family is being targeted with violence, and he is pushing Jay away because he does not want him to get caught in the crosshairs. So our characters throughout this duology are constantly fighting to be together and to be in a safe relationship. They are fighting for this safe relationship in multiple ways. One, they just want to be physically safe. They don't want people shooting at them. They don't want to be kidnapped. They don't want to be threatened. And on the other hand, both of these boys are rather young and sometimes rather dumb, and they do things that hurt the other. And so they really need to work on themselves and each other as a couple and just have a ton of important conversations. And there is just so much character growth throughout this story. This story has a ton of wonderful platonic relationships, side characters are wonderful, friendships, family, community, all of it. 10 out of 10. This book handles a lot of important topics. We're talking about toxic masculinity, we're talking about racism, we're talking about homophobia, we're talking about colorism, we're talking about the threat of gentrification. So there is a lot going on in this story, and until it has 10,000 ratings, I will continue to hype up this book and its companion together. Next, this book had 579 ratings, and that is gonna be His Cocky Prince by Cole McCade. If you have been on my channel for a while, then you know that I have been reading Cole McCade's Criminal Intention series. Yes, I will be continuing with season 2 eventually. Hopefully in the next couple months or so. It's been on my brain. But that being said, this is actually the first series that I read by him, and this is the third book in this series. The other books in the series have slightly higher ratings, but this one had the lowest, and so I wanted to go ahead and talk about it. Out of the 3 books, I read them a little bit out of order. I read book 2, then book 1, and then book 3. They're all companion novels, so it's totally fine to read them out of order the way that I did. But I would say that my favorite was book 1, which was called His Cocky Ballet, but book 3 was my second favorite, and so I do think that it deserves a little bit more hype. Like, why are you guys reading the first 2 books but sleeping on this one? Now, there's a part of me that understands, because I'm going to tell you some of the tropes. I usually don't like to condense a book down to like its tropes, but this does have an age gap. It has He's a Secret Prince, and it has consensual non-consent. All 3 books in this series have a BDSM kind of theme to it when it comes to the relationships, and the consensual non-consent is what's going on in this book. If you're not familiar with consensual non-consent, it essentially means that the person wants to feel like they are about to be R-worded. They're going to be sexually assaulted. And so for some people, that seems like a pretty controversial kink to have, because obviously getting sexually assaulted is a very traumatic experience. But obviously, as with all BDSM kinks, it is handled with care, with safe words, and setting boundaries, and tons of communication. It is personally a trope that I have read a couple times, and both times I have quite enjoyed it. But obviously, if it is something you're uncomfortable with, you should avoid this book, and that's possibly why it has lower ratings, because some people might not be as comfortable with that as they are with other BDSM kinks. But that being said, in this we are following 2 actors. We have an older actor who's kind of reached the point where he's expected to play different roles than he has in the past. Essentially, he is no longer the love interest. He is to play the love interest's father, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's that time in my life where I'm like so old, like I have to play the dad. Are you serious? And at the new movie, he is set to play the father, and then the love interest is to play, well, the young love interest of the actual movie. And this is actually a actor kind of up and coming who respects our actor a lot, and is like, hey, I would love it if you kind of help me out a little bit. And our main character is, you know, a bit of a grump. He's not loving his life right now because there's a lot of changes happening that he's just not ready to have happen. He's not ready to be put out to pasture and things like that. Obviously, he's facing some jealousy that this young guy is, you know, in the prime of his life still. However, they do end up starting a romantic relationship. Maybe not like super romantic in the beginning, definitely giving more lusty, but still they start to grow really close to each other. And then it turns out things are even more complicated because this guy is like a secret prince. So, and you know, secret princes are usually expected to marry women so they can produce heirs and everything like that. So I have to admit, it has been so long since I've read this book that I don't remember the finer details of it, but I love Cole McCade's writing. Cole McCade's writing, I've said it before and I will say it again, works so well for these slightly darker romances, these slightly kinkier romances. His writing is so sexy, so it is so delicious and addictive. So I absolutely adored this story. It was definitely giving more Grump, Sunshine kind of vibes. I really enjoyed the dynamics. I will say, I wonder if Cole McCade likes doing age gap romances, because the first book in this series was also an age gap, and then when I'm reading the Criminal Intentions series, that couple is also an age gap. So I think Cole McCade's got a thing for age gaps, and he does it very well. It's not at all creepy, and it's not giving like weird power dynamics or anything. So this book, or really any of the 3 books that are in this trilogy, are definitely worth checking out, especially if you're looking for something slightly darker. I would say that as far as the consensual non-consent goes, it doesn't do anything like super crazy. Like I said, I'm not someone who's read this trope a lot, but even for someone as inexperienced, for me, it wasn't shocking or anything like that. So if it's something you're kind of looking to dabble in, this might be a good starting spot. So I actually want to talk about an entire series, but I think I'm just gonna pop up the first book in the series because there's like 7 or 8 of them. And this is The Men of the Halfway House by Jamie Rees. And most of these have under 3,000 ratings. And this is just a companion series, contemporary male romances that I read. I think I might have finished off a few of them after I started my channel, but I think quite a few of them I was reading before I started my channel. And this essentially just follows different characters. Most of the time, they are people that are coming out of prison and they are going to this halfway house so they can readjust to everyday life. They can make sure they don't break parole. They can see about getting jobs, doing anything else that they need to do to reacquaint themselves with the real world and become a model citizen. And in the first book, we are following a man who is getting out of prison, and a beloved family member of his has passed away and left him a lot of money, and he decides to use this to build the halfway house so that he can help other people who are in similar positions to himself. And he ends up falling in love with the man he hires to build this home. And then we follow different prisoners. Some of the relationships don't include ex-cons, but they might be like detectives or people that are related to the ex-con. Like, in a way, everybody is interconnected, despite the fact that we are following ex-cons. For the most part, this, I would say, is a very sweet, heartwarming series. It does get smutty and that was a part of it that I did enjoy, but for the most part, I would definitely say that these are very loving. We see a lot of people who are coming out of hardship, who are looking at getting a second chance at life. They might have been mistreated in the past. They may have had a very difficult, traumatic past. They are people that might be very scared to trust and to open up, and they are finding people who kind of gets them to feel alive and to feel loved and to feel hope for their future again. So all of these stories were really feel good for me. I have to admit, I initially picked this up because because the final book follows a character who is deaf, and I wanted to read that book for the deaf representation. I think that is kind of the only one that has disability representation in it. There might be some other characters who have maybe like OCD, ADHD kind of things, probably some depression and anxiety based off of the demographic that we're kind of working with. But it has been a few years since I last picked them up, so I couldn't tell you all the rep just off of the top of my head. But if you're looking for a feel-good story, I definitely think these are worth checking out. When I read them, they were all available on KU, so I would definitely go ahead and check out and see if that's still the case. Up next, this book has 1,883 ratings, and this is the only one that's not male or Achillean, and that is going to be Trouble by Rousey Adams. And this is a short novella. It is a poly romance. It is, I don't know how you decide what order it goes in. I guess you could say FMF. Essentially, we have a married couple, a woman and a man, and they have always been polyamorous, but they have never met their partner's lovers. They've never shared a partner or anything like that. However, one day our man meets a woman online, and he is like, hey, I'm really interested in meeting this woman and everything, but she wants to meet you, honey. She does not believe that we are polyamorous. I mean, she's skeptical about it. She just wants to make sure she's not about to become the other woman. And so our couple goes to meet this woman, and the wife actually realizes that she has met this woman before and that they really hit it off. And so obviously this third woman is kind of like, you know what? I really like both of you. And so they take her home, and it is such a sexy and good time. I remember after reading this, how astounded I was that the author was able to make me really feel the adoration and love that these characters started to have for each other in such a short span. I've said it before in this video, I'm not much of a short story novella girly. I usually always need more, but sometimes authors just know how to do it right. And this author is one of them. I truly believe that these were three people that were just meant to be together. They were so happy and so loving, and they took care of each other. This book very much focused on, when it came to polyamory, communication is key. And it really focused on making sure that all of the characters felt included and that they felt equal. This wasn't some weird book where one dude was like, yeah, I could bang two hot chicks at one time. No, this was a building of a family, and it was just, I had such a wonderful time with it, and it made me so happy. And I really think that more people need to go ahead and check this book out. I am someone who really enjoys polyamorous stories, and I think that this is a really great place to start because it is handled so well when it comes to the communication aspect of polyamory. So yes, I will keep talking about this book. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but it really was a book that took me by surprise, and I really do think it deserves a lot more love than it has gotten. All right, so our second to last book had 3,710 ratings, and this is going to be Evolved by N.R. Walker, and this is a sci-fi story. It is relatively short as well. I remember that I read it in its entirety on my flight back from Germany back in like 2023. So once again, it's been a little while since I've read it, but I will do my best to talk about it eloquently. So in this book, we have a man who has OCD, and essentially he's very particular about the way certain things are done, the way that his house is kept, the way that he lives his life, and this has negatively impacted his ability to have romantic relationships because he's like, there's a specific way I want things, and I'm not really willing to compromise on any of that. So he decides to essentially give himself a AI companion. So these are very high-tech robots that essentially appear to be human. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell that it was some sort of robot. You would think it was a real person. And so he gets one of these robots and he kind of like is like, hey, here's how this thing is gonna go. You're gonna be my boyfriend and we're just gonna kind of live together and everything will be fine. And the robot is like, that's really great. Are we gonna have sex? And our guy's like, you're not supposed to initiate that kind of stuff. Like, what's going on here? And the robot's just like, I really like you. And it kind of turns out that he got a newer model, one that wasn't actually on the market. And it was a model that could kind of evolve and therefore was presenting as more human. And this robot, because it was more human, was developing real emotions for our character and wanted to express those. And then the company finds out that they gave out the wrong robot and they want him back. And our character's like, no, he's mine. You can't have him. And so they have to figure out a way to stay together because there's a chance that if this company gets our poor little robot in their hands, they might completely wipe him from existence, which obviously we don't want. This was another feel-good story. I kind of love the trope of following someone who sees the magic in everyday things. Like they've never experienced them before. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm drinking coffee, or that person has a dog, or we're going clothes shopping and this is so amazing and I get to do it with you. And I feel like stories like that kind of remind you to enjoy the day-to-day miracles that we get to experience as human beings on this tiny little planet that we live on. And so between the romance and this golden retriever character of ours, I just had a wonderful time with these characters, and there were definitely some high stakes. And I was stressed about it because I cared about them and I wanted them to be together and to be happy. And I think the author did a really good job at getting us really attached to these characters because your girl was stressing. But if you are someone who is into sci-fi romances, then this is definitely one that is worth checking out, especially nowadays. I know AI is relatively big, but you know, there's still a lot of conversations that are being had about like what makes a person human, at what point is something sentient. And this book touches on that topic a little bit. It is more focused on the romance than like deep philosophical conversations, but it was still a great time. All right, and the last book, and this one has quite a few more ratings than the other books. It has 9,240 ratings on Goodreads, and that is going to be Lord of Eternal Flame by Ben Alderson. I have read the second and third book in this series as well. They are all companion novels and are all technically standalones. I don't think you at all have to read all of them or in any particular order. I do still need to read the fourth and what I think is the final book in this series, but I wanted to talk about this one because so far it is my favorite out of them all. This is essentially a Beauty and the Beast retelling. All the books in this series are a retelling of some sort. The second one was kind of a Hades Persephone vibe. The third one was a Red Riding Hood vibe. And the third one is giving a Little Mermaid. But in this one, we are following a witch. And he is the only witch that is strong enough to go into this manor and kill the monster that lives there. And that monster is a vampire. And so our witch heads in to accomplish his task, but that becomes a little bit more difficult when he starts to fall for this vampire and he starts to learn some unpleasant information about his coven. I really enjoyed the story. I think that it had a really good ambiance. it had a good vibe. I feel like as far as like vampire witch, we're living in this old manor. There's not really anyone else around. You know, when you go out into the garden, you have to stay on the path or something will attack you. It's got good eerie vibes going on. I enjoyed the magic of it. I really did enjoy the relationship between these two. I thought that it was very sexy. I think that it gave me exactly what you would expect from a sensual cover such as this. I thought that the writing was really well done and worked really well for this kind of story. I do remember thinking that the story had some interesting lore in it as well. So I think that if you are looking for a queer version of the classic vampire witch, I'm sent to kill you but now I want to kiss you kind of vibes, then this is definitely a book you need to check out. Plus all of the author's books have like stunning covers so they're definitely worth putting on your shelf. All right guys, so those are the 8 books that I want to recommend for Pride Month, next year, next century. You can read queer books whenever you want, and you should, because they are fantastic. Once again, let me know if you have read any of these and what you thought of them, and don't forget to leave your underhyped recommendations down in the comments so that other people can check them out as well, and that includes me wanting to check them out. As always guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.